What's going on, guys? This is the Edge DFS. We're talking showdown, Chargers versus Raiders. My name is Tyson Smith. I'm joined by Ellie Hernandez. Ellie, what's going on, man? We missed a show, unfortunately, for Monday Night Football. Sorry about that, guys. Ellie, you did a nice write-up in the Discord. We're going to continue that trend, I think, from here on out if we can. But how'd your building go for Monday night? How'd you do?
I did all right. Some of those garbage time points or those fourth quarter points. I think the Ravens hit the over themselves. On the game total. So, obviously it's tough to build for something like that. But I think one of the things that hurt me the most was I didn't have enough Lamar Jackson at captain. So when it comes to fading him, I don't think I'm doing that again.
I don't ever want to see it again. Ever.
That was
thanks, Tom Cruise.
Yeah, thanks, Tom Cruise. That was a hell of a game, man. I don't think we need to reiterate that at all. I think that was a fucking hell of a game, one of the best games of the year, considering we've had some terrible showdown matchups this year. Just dog shit, garbage games. A Sunday morning game, it would be terrible for that, but especially on an island, it would. Yeah. Anyways, this matchup on Monday night was super awesome, crazy drama. You got, Lamar talking about he was cramping, although I think he really meant crapping, is what he really meant. Anyways, we'll never know. He's got the bubble guts from COVID, the residual effects. So anyways, let's move on to this matchup. As you can see, I'm in a different location. I'm traveling for work here in Phoenix, so bear with me if things aren't perfect technically wise. We're not going to have a screen capture this week. We will have our typical screen capture for the lineup builds. I just won't be able to show you some of the other details, so bear with us this week. We'll be back to normal here in a couple days. Ellie and I both have plenty of time off for Christmas, so we're going to go pretty heavy on these shows. We're going to do NBA shows as well. So stick with us, subscribe, like, all that fun stuff. We appreciate it. So let's look at the Vegas lines here for this game. We've got, obviously, Chargers visiting the Raiders in Vegas. Chargers are 4-9. The Raiders are poised for the playoffs. Potentially, they have a shot still.
Playoffs.
So we'll kind of see how this goes. This is a big game for the Raiders. I think it's a big game for the Chargers as well, because I think I think Anthony Lynn is on a tight rope right now. If they lose this game, I don't know how long he's going to survive. I don't even know if he'll survive to the end of the year. I'm sure they'll just fire him on the last game. But there's a lot of pride for the Chargers. I think they're a really damn good team, and you've got a great rookie quarterback. But the Raiders legit have a shot to make the playoffs here. They've fallen off the past few weeks. They are favored in this game. They're minus 190 favorites. Implied total of 53 overall, and they're 3.5-point favorites. So tell me what you think about this. I personally think I'm surprised slightly that the Raiders are favored by on the money line by this much, but I think the spread is pretty accurate considering they're at home. It's sort of a pick 'em when you really consider it. But I just think that the Raiders, while they've had a bad few weeks, I think they're overall a better team. They have more to play for. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I think the first thing that I want to call out is the 53 total. For me, that just immediately signals the fact that this is a good game to not play defense. So I think that's going to save us a little bit of, variance on our builds and our initial builds.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think that's necessarily earth-shattering, as Las Vegas sucks on defense. So
yeah.
I'm kind of excited for this game because as much as the Raiders have to play for here, and as little as the Chargers do, there's still a good chance that this is going to be a competitive game just because it is a division rivalry. We've talked about it all the time on this show, but these division rivalry games are pretty intense. I mean, remember, the Raiders are the only team to beat the Chiefs this year. So
yeah.
it's not like the Raiders are any slouch, right? They're a pretty solid team, and they have a lot of work to do. But I'm going to go ahead and say it, and you guys can fucking call this a hot take alert or I'm a dumbass. I'm fine with either. But I think we really need to go back and kind of revisit how we were talking shit about John Gruden and some of these trades he made, like getting rid of Khalil Mack. I mean, I think it's more impressive that he has the potential to take a Raiders team to the fucking playoffs with one of his star players being Nelson Aguilar, right?
Yeah.
So I think it says volumes about what's going on over there, and I think that they're a little bit better than everybody's giving them credit for. And this is coming from a guy who doesn't give a shit about the Raiders, so let's just be clear.
Well, we have to go back also and remember some of these big wins they've had, not only the Chiefs, but like there's been some showdown matches where they've really proven that they can be a solid playoff team this year. They just sort of fallen off the past couple of weeks. And I think recency bias is going to come into play when it comes to this matchup because they're actually lower owned than the Chargers. And just because the Chargers had a win last week, we can't forget about how bad the Chargers have been this year. They have a lot of talent. They're on paper they're a much better team than the Raiders, but the record just doesn't reflect that. And they've made some bad coaching decisions as well this year.
And I feel like we say that about the Chargers every year, right? Like this is a team that either starts well and then like just barely misses that wild card spot, or they fucking suck dick at the beginning of the year and then all of a sudden just miss the wild card spot. And I really think this is where Anthony Lynn is probably going to lose his job. He could get fired after this game if it's not close.
Yeah, I think I like the Raiders in this game, especially considering that their initial ownership projections are putting them lower than the Chargers. I think the names on the Chargers are just sexier and they're easier to play in DFS. You got Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, Justin Herbert. Those are pretty sexy names, and you can count on volume to those guys. And then when it comes to the Raiders, we just don't know what to expect. I know what to expect, but I think that the general population when it comes to DFS just doesn't know how to handle them. So real quick, let's just get into our horse's mouth segment. We have some we can't do a Raiders showdown slate without letting John Gruden talk.
I just want to know from the horse's mouth, what is the dealio?
All right, so obviously Gruden had to can his is it Paul Gunther? I think that's the defensive coordinator's name. He had to can this guy. I don't know. Maybe he did it at halftime last week. Look, that game last week against why am I blanking? It was the Colts, right? Yeah, it was the Colts. Was it? Hang on, let me confirm that. I watched the freaking game like this morning. Why don't I remember who the hell they played? Yes, Indy. They lost 27-44.
Yes.
But look, that game was pretty competitive for the first half. Josh Jacobs was crushing in the first quarter. He looked great. I think he got games scripted out. Anyways, we'll get into that in a minute. But the point is, they got absolutely destroyed on the ground last week. They gave up 44 points, one of which was a pick six. There was some offensive issues that made the defense look bad. But let's listen to John Gruden talk about what happened with his coordinator. He didn't get too much into it, but let's see what he says.
No, I'm not going to answer, a million questions today. It's a very tough decision we made. Paul is a great friend and a great coach, and he's given a great effort here for 2.5 years. And it was a very tough circumstance with the COVID, players coming and going, all the injuries. We need a new voice right now. I think it'll help Paul in the long run. Probably getting away from me, but certainly he's a great coach. We thank him for everything that he has done. But we need a new voice right now. I think we need a new energy. And with 3 games left, we're going to let Rod Marinelli call the plays. He's experienced doing that. We have a good staff. We have a lot of young players, and we want to service those players the best way we can.
All right, so, maybe they'll get a little kick in the ass. I know it's just a defensive coordinator. It's not like they fired the coach. You know how when they a team fires the coach, the next week they come out all fired up, ready to play. I don't know how that translates specifically for a coordinator, but you would think, okay, maybe they're going to come out with a little bit of refreshed energy here and maybe be more focused. But the only issue I'm seeing is they have a lot of injuries on the defensive side of things. There's not a whole lot of injuries to talk about when it comes to fantasy purpose, like, actual players you're going to start. There's a few that we'll get to, but let's just hear from John Gruden about actually what's going on the defensive side.
It's a hard question right now. Cleve Farrell comes out of the game. John Abram is in concussion protocol. Nick Morrow's in concussion protocol. We're missing Damon Arnett, Jeff Heath. A lot of guys are unavailable right now. So we like our young team. I want to reiterate that. We do have some veteran players that we are excited about. We got to put it all together.
And let's hear some more here.
You mentioned the injuries. Is there any hope on a short week of getting some of those guys back that didn't play yesterday or got hurt yesterday?
Be tough. It's going to be tough. They got to go through the proper channels, and I'll have to update you on that as soon as possible. But right now we have a lot of players in question.
So there's a chance that this defense could even be worse than they've been in the past few games, just simply because of injuries. So it's something to keep an eye on here. When it comes to injuries, from the fantasy side of things, I don't have my graphic this week, but we'll just talk about kind of what we're looking at. Looks like Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are limited in practice. They're officially listed as questionable. At least there's some conflicting reports here on different optimizers and different sites. But looks like Keenan Allen and Mike Williams were limited. They both sort of went out for a time last week. Mike Williams hurt his back early in the game. He didn't return. And then Keenan Allen, I think, missed a few drives or something to that effect. So something to keep an eye on. I think it's trending that they're both going to come back and play. And obviously you've got Henry Ruggs, who is out officially. So what are your thoughts on some of these injuries here? I think Keenan Allen will play. I think Mike Williams, if anything, maybe really the guy that we need to keep an eye out for, because he is injury prone and he did hurt his back, and that's not usually a good sign. But I think they're trending towards coming back. So what do you think about this?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are huge. Keenan Allen, I expect to play. I think he's like Julio Jones, except doesn't miss as much time. He's just going to be listed as questionable just because he's one of their star guys, right?
Yeah.
Mike Williams, yeah, he really is injury prone. So if he has a back issue and didn't return last week, that's something I'll be keeping a close eye on. But it does make some interesting leverage plays, because I don't think he's going to be a guy that people are going to be high on if he does end up starting.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I might have a little bit more interest in him at that point. One that I do want to call out here that's pretty interesting to me is Brian Bulaga, right? He didn't practice today or whenever they practiced last. I don't think they practiced on Wednesdays before Thursday night. But he's a very good tackle, and I think he can check.
Yeah. Go ahead,
Can you
bro.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, bro. You're good.
Oh, okay. Cool. Sorry, it froze on my end. But yeah, Brian Bulaga, he's a great tackle. I think he impacts that offensive line a little bit. Now, granted, they do have Austin Eckler back, so I think he gives them a little bit more of an ability to kind of shy away from having that missing piece on the offensive line, just because he's a dynamic player. But these offensive line injuries are concerning to me, especially when you have a rookie quarterback who hasn't been the same since he got his haircut, right? So I am kind of keeping an eye on some of these injuries. And normally we don't get too deep into the defense and the offensive line injuries, but this is going to be one to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, look, you got Trey Turner too. He had full practice this week. But I mean, that's a starting guard. So if two of these guys are down, all of a sudden it becomes an interesting situation. And I think that gives Austin Eckler even more of a boost, because people don't want to, or because I don't think that they're going to want to leave Justin Herbert in a shitty situation like that. But again, it's a struggling team, and Anthony Lynn hasn't made some of the brightest calls for his group. So I don't know what's going to happen here.
This is going to be an interesting game, because both of these teams have a lot of potential. They just usually can't see it through. They're a young team. We've got a rookie quarterback who's playing well. You just don't know how consistent he's going to be when it comes to actually winning and coming out there and playing well for an entire 4 quarters. But I think he has super high upside, along with a lot of these players in this game. It's just which teams are going to show up. So let's get into the breakdown here. We're going to take it position by position. Then we're going to give you our fade of the night, our crown their ass segment, which is our favorite captain choice based on ownership, based on salary. And then we're going to build a lineup together. So let's check it out. Break it down. All right, guys. So we've got at quarterback here, pretty decent pricing here. You got Justin Herbert, who is 11.8K. And then you've got Derek Carr at 10K straight up. Now, to me, that's really interesting because, look, Derek Carr has not been bad. Even in the last few games where they haven't played well. I know against Atlanta they really sucked, and he had a terrible game. But last week against Indy, he slung the ball. I mean, he threw the ball 45 times. He had 31 completions, 316 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have 2 interceptions. He also had a rushing touchdown. So he scored 28 fantasy points, and then against the Jets he scored 35. You can't really judge that. But against Indy, who's a good defense, this is what's popping out to me for that game last week. They did get beat pretty bad on the scoreboard, but that was a competitive game overall. I know they got their ass kicked on the ground, but they had a shot there. There was an interception for a touchdown that really put it out of reach in the with like 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter or something like that. But they had a shot. They were driving. They could have won that game. They could have at least made it closer. And Derek Carr did pretty good. There wasn't really. I know he had some turnovers, but there really wasn't. There really wasn't a terrible performance from that team besides the defense. So Derek Carr at 10K is really interesting to me. He's 1.8K cheaper than Justin Herbert. And look, Herbert is okay, but like if you look at some of his past performances over the past few weeks, he had a 16-point game against Atlanta and they won. So you're talking about they beat Atlanta 20-7 last week. He only had 16 fantasy points. He threw two touchdowns and an interception. The week before that, that's when they got their ass absolutely kicked by New England. Let's just forget that happened. He threw the ball 53 times. He only completed 26 attempts and only scored 6 fantasy points. So look, obviously we know Justin Herbert can play. We know he has a high ceiling. He has high upside. He can rush the ball a little bit. He's no Kyler Murray, but he's mobile. He can move around. I just don't think that 1.8K difference in salary is really worth it to me for Justin Herbert, especially for a team that we just don't know which team is going to show up. So how are you handling quarterbacks here? Are you going to get both of these guys in your lineup? I personally think we're probably going to have to just fade one of these guys. You most likely aren't going to be able to put both of them in your lineups considering the pricing of the rest of the field.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. And I'll look into this a little bit further, but it kind of looks like a lot of the drop-off in performance seems to kind of coincide with the return of Austin Eckler, right? I don't think that Justin Herbert clearly has the talent to be a pretty solid NFL quarterback. He's in a tough division, and he's put up some decent stats this year. But Austin Eckler he's a good running back. He's a really, really good running back. So I think the wise thing to do is alleviate some of the pressure that you have on Justin Herbert and lean on Austin Eckler. And just given his price and ownership, I'm not that interested. I'll obviously have some exposure, but I'll probably be closer to half the field or maybe 15 to 20% under the field, right? So I can't really jam him in given the fact that he's 11,800. That just seems a bit steep, especially given his last 3 games. It's 16 points, 6, 17 points. And I mean, you struggled against an Atlanta team that's not great. Their defense has gotten a lot better since they fired Dan Quinn, right? Or whoever the fuck their coach was. I mean, Jim Mora. I don't know.
Jim Mora Jr.
And Buffalo, I understand that they're deep. Perfect. Yeah, Buffalo, their defense is improving a little bit, so I understand the 17 points there. The Patriots, we don't know who the fuck that team is, apparently.
Yeah.
So, look, I can't expect a rookie quarterback to continue passing the ball 40 times a game and expect efficiency and good quarterback play. We talked about it before. Once you get over 35 attempts for pretty much every quarterback in the NFL that isn't Big Ben or Pat Mahomes, you're kind of fucked. You're not going to get the output that you need, and you start losing efficiency. So I'm just not that interested in Herbert. Derek Carr, I don't know what else to say. He shouldn't be 10K given his recent output,
Yeah.
given his output all year.
Yeah.
He has 2 floor games where he just fucking tanked.
Mm-hmm.
But everything else has been pretty much 15 points or higher.
Yeah.
And it looks like he's starting to get more rushing attempts, which I'm sure we can all remember back to the year they made the playoffs and went like 11-5. That was one of the things that made him a dynamic quarterback, is his ability to escape pressure and hit open receivers. And again, he's doing it with fucking Nelson Aguilar and Henry Ruggs. I understand he has Darren Waller out there, who's a goddamn beast, and Josh Jacobs, but you know, this isn't necessarily a superstar offense. This is a team that was looking to rebuild with all their first round draft picks and was expecting to be having a shot at the playoffs in maybe another year or two. So I think Derek Carr is in a great spot. And I'm probably going to have him in almost every lineup.
I agree. Justin Herbert will be the highest owned player on this slate, both the captain and in the flex. And to me, I just don't understand that.
Guys, and if you're watching this, and I'm going to be honest, I don't watch the fucking Chargers. I have no interest in watching the Chargers on a week-to-week basis. So if you're watching this and we're just wrong about Justin Herbert, please comment in the comments so we don't lose our ass. But it's easy leverage for a very, very high-priced player. That if you're playing this guy, you're probably going to have to play Foster Moreau, right? There's only a handful of guys that you're going to be playing with these guys all in your lineup. So I don't know. Give us feedback if you know something we don't.
The pricing is pretty spread out here. There's not a ton of value that I'm comfortable with. You know, there's usually like an $1,800 guy or something that I'm like, dude, that guy, play that fucking guy. And you can get him in 50+% of your lineups and feel comfortable plugging in a lot of these high-priced guys. I just don't necessarily see that this week. There are some value plays that we'll get into, but you're going to have to make a decision. Keenan Allen, Eckler, Jacobs, Waller, and the 2 quarterbacks. You're going to have to fade one of those guys. And to me, I'd rather fade Herbert at that price and at the ownership, because me personally, I'm not going to fade both quarterbacks in this game at a 50-something plus total. So I got to choose one to limit. And by fade, I'm not just going to uncheck him. If he's overall both captain and utility combined, I don't know, 60, 70% owned, maybe I'll get 30% of him or 40% of him, and spread it out from there. I just feel like I would rather go with the Raiders more here and Derek Carr. At that price tag, it allows me for some more flexibility. Now, can Herbert come out and absolutely crush things? Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we saw it with Baker Mayfield. You know, he came out in that slate. I feel like, I played a handful of lineups. I didn't build my typical 40+ lineups, whatever. I hand built a few. And I didn't have Baker in any of them. And I was still sweating it. I still had a shot, but that Baker Mayfield touchdown, that rushing touchdown at the end, ended it for me. And I think you were the same. And the reason I bring that up is because that can happen again. Obviously, we can get a rushing touchdown from Herbert. We can get three passing touchdowns, and then your day is over. Which I get it. I'm not telling you to just uncheck Justin Herbert. I'm telling you, you're going to have to choose one of these guys to fade, and I'm more comfortable fading him as opposed to the rest of, I'd rather fade Herbert over Keenan Allen, because in Showdown you don't necessarily have to pair your quarterbacks with your wide receivers. It's just the way it is. A lot of times you do, but in this case I'm going to just go a little bit under the field on him. Anything else to add to this? Because I think this is an important piece to this puzzle.
No, man, I don't really have anything else. I mean, we're both in the same spot. There's only so many build types that you can get if you have Justin Herbert and Derek Carr, right? And the point of the way we build is to specifically avoid chalk, right? One of the lineups that I had for the Monday Night Football game, I was duplicated with 2 other people, and it was a top lineup until the Baker Mayfield rushing touchdown.
Yeah.
So that's what we're looking for, right? And granted, yes, it's because I fucking jammed Gus Edwards into a shitload of lineups at 11%, which, by the way, was absolutely ridiculous, guys.
Don't get it. Yeah.
If you read our notes, if you read my notes in the Discord, that was kind of one of my call outs. He was one of my favorite plays on the slate. Should have had him at captain, but Kareem Hunt ended up being optimal. Anyways, Look, you can get different, but I just don't know spending up at 11,800 for this guy. You're limiting the amount of builds that you can potentially have, and you're increasing your odds of being duplicated.
All right, let's move over to running backs for the Chargers. We've got Austin Eckler, who's back. He's back in full force. He's crushing it. He's one of the highest projected guys on the slate. I think he's top 3 ownership on the slate, and well-deserved. He is expensive. He's at 10.4K. You've got Kalen Ballage at 2,400, Justin Jackson at 2K, and Joshua Kelly at 600. When Austin Eckler was out, this backfield was a clusterfuck. There was injuries. There were splitting carries. One guy would go off one week. Kalen Ballage would score 17 touchdowns in 1 week, and then he'd get benched at halftime of the next game. It just super shit show when it comes to their backfield. But now that Austin Eckler is back, I think it's pretty easy to say, look, play Austin Eckler as much as possible, because I know he was injured, but he's got fresh legs for the most part. I know he was hurt, so that doesn't necessarily mean that he's 100% right now. But, he missed 8 weeks or so. And he's had some great games. Against New England, he had, not a very good game, but no one on the team did. He sort of got game scripted out of that, I'm assuming. But last week, he scored 23 fantasy points. The week before the New England game, he scored 23 fantasy points. He's going to get targets. He's going to get receptions. I mean, look, he got 9 receptions last week. He got 4 receptions against New England, and he got 11 receptions and 16 targets. 16 targets.
Dude, look at those targets.
Like, the targets are there. They're definitely there. And you're talking about a guy who's probably going to get you 60-plus receiving yards and potentially 5 to 10 receptions, in addition to his 15 carries. So, to me, I know Austin Eckler is really expensive, and I know he's going to be popular. But we can find ways to be different in other ways. Don't overthink Austin Eckler. Unless he fucking breaks his leg in the first quarter, I don't see him not being in the optimal lineup. That's just me. Especially if this team is losing at any point, they're just going to dump it to him all the time. And this is a game script that if you have Austin Eckler in and you don't, let's say you have Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen in a lineup together, and you don't have Justin Herbert, that's okay, because you're talking about a shitload of receptions. Those players really climb up the leaderboard with receptions, while Justin Herbert is only getting a couple yards here and there on his dump offs. So that's one path that I like, is just fading Herbert and getting 2 or 3 of the best position players from the Chargers as opposed to Herbert, because then you're automatically unique. You're only competing with 25% of the field, and you can do whatever the hell you want, especially if you go with a captain that's not as popular. So any interest in any of the other running backs, I don't think we need to talk much about Austin Eckler, because we know that's a lock. Like, I'm on him in every lineup, and I'm not worried about him busting in this game. I feel pretty confident that he's going to at least hit 15 fantasy points, and I think if you have him at a floor of 15, I think that's pretty damn good, and I'm willing to pay up for it. But with Ballage, Justin Jackson, Joshua Kelly, I mean, if anything, Ballage can steal a touchdown here or there. But at 2,400 for Ballage and the rest of these guys, I just don't know if I like, if you watch our show before, we like playing, the RB1 and RB2 together sometimes. I don't think it's necessary for this game. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessary, but I will say that I will have probably 2 or 3 lineups like that with Kalen Ballage, specifically because if we look at his targets over the past couple of weeks, excluding the Buffalo game, I mean, he's got 2 against Atlanta, and he's got 4 against the Pats with 7 carries in each. At 2,400 right now, he may be potential value for us, and nobody's going to be stacking Kalen Ballage and Austin Eckler and fading Justin Herbert.
You're right.
So
you're right.
You only need to do that once or twice to get different. But just to put it in perspective, between him and Austin Eckler last week alone, they accounted for 25% of the targets of the total pass attempts from Justin Herbert, which doesn't make sense to me when you have Keenan Allen, who's probably getting 60% of the targets.
Yeah.
So that means you're spreading out 15 to 20% across the rest of the team.
Yeah.
So that becomes an interesting play for me. And again, keep an eye on injury status, right? If Austin Eckler all of a sudden gets ruled out and Kalen Ballage is $2,400 and starting, I'm fucking locking him into every lineup.
Yeah, Austin Eckler was limited on Tuesday. He's technically questionable. I haven't seen any injury reports coming out saying that this guy is actually questionable. Maybe this is a Patriots situation where everyone's questionable until they're not. So just keep an eye on that.
And that's what I expect for this one too. But it's just something to keep an eye on, right? This is one of those reasons why you watch news close to law. And yeah, I expect that him and Keenan Allen are probably the same. I would list them as questionable anyways, especially because Austin Eckler is on the smaller side. So you never know what's truly bothering him.
All right, let's move over to the Raiders side of things here. Sorry to interrupt you, man. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say I don't want Justin Jackson. That's it.
Yeah. I don't think I want to go down lower than Ballage. I mean, look, there's potential for that. If you're 150 maxing it, you can afford to do Jackson and Kelly maybe in one or two lineups or a few. I mean, probably not Kelly, but Justin Jackson maybe. I'm just not going to get there, me personally. So let's go to Vegas side of the ball. We got Josh Jacobs at 8,800, which is criminal. I get it. He hasn't been lighting it up lately. But you're talking about, if you rewind a few weeks ago, we're talking about one of the best running backs in the NFL. Most dynamic guys. He was trending up, and he's had a few bad weeks. But Josh Jacobs is still the same guy. And he's at 8,800. And he's, potentially under 35% owned. And it's possible that he could be under 10% in the captain. This is a slate-breaking kind of guy, a kind of guy that can easily score 2-3 touchdowns, get multiple receptions. I love Josh Jacobs. I want to have Josh Jacobs in every single lineup. And I know that we're doing Eckler versus Josh Jacobs, and typically speaking, maybe you don't want to have both running backs from each team in your lineups. I just don't think that it matters in this matchup. There's going to be a lot of offense to go around. And both of these guys are the focal point of the offenses. I know that Keenan Allen takes away a little bit from Austin Eckler, but still, Eckler is going to get those receptions. Josh Jacobs is going to get every opportunity to run the ball. Like I said last week, he had a great first quarter. Even into the second quarter, he was crushing it. And then the game sort of fell apart from there. So you can't just look at his fantasy box score and say, oh, man, he didn't have a great game last week. Because he did. In my opinion, he did. He had 10 fantasy points. 13 rush attempts for 50 yards. He didn't get in the end zone. So one receiving touchdown or one touchdown near in the red zone, and that changes everything. Now his ownership is up because he got one extra play. It has nothing to do with him particularly in that game. It was the way the game script was going. He was game scripted out of that. 8,800. Look, I know when they lost to Atlanta 6-43, he got 6 fantasy points, and then against Kansas City they lost. He had 13 fantasy points. I get it. He's sort of all over the place, but you're talking about one of the most dynamic, best players in the NFL, in my opinion. And at 8,800, he's one of the cheapest guys that we've seen with this much potential. I'm just going to get a shitload of him, and if he just has like a 12, 13-point fantasy output, I'll be okay with it because I know what his upside is. And we're using leverage here. And the fact that he's like the 6th highest owned player potentially, that's just criminal. What do you think here, man?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I do want to call one thing out. This isn't the same thing as running Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs if, say, the Titans and Raiders were playing, right?
Yeah.
But Austin Eckler we've established that he's a wide receiver with rushing upside at this point.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, 9 targets, 16 targets, 9 targets. That's not output that you would expect for a running back. So I don't think you're doing anything too negatively correlated by stacking Josh Jacobs and Austin Eckler in every lineup.
Yeah.
And to be honest, that's going to be my core is stacking Derek Carr, Josh Jacobs, Austin Eckler.
Yeah. Yep.
I have no reason to fade him. At 8,800, he has the upside to go off. This is one of those Alabama boys. So I've got
you son of a bitch.
So, we don't have the other guy, Henry Ruggs, to talk about today, unfortunately.
You son of a bitch.
But, I think Josh Jacobs is in a great position to smash here. I think you can get both him and Derek Carr in the same lineup and get a pretty good, decent output. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I understand he hasn't had a game like he did in week 1 against the Panthers with 35 fantasy points, but I mean, what do you expect? You're not going to rush for 3 touchdowns every game unless you're Aaron Jones, and even that's 2-3 times a season.
Yeah.
So Josh Jacobs is going to be one of my favorite plays on the slate. Beyond that, I may have some Devontae Booker at 1,800. Jalen Richard isn't a terrible dart throw at 1,200. But again, I think you're looking at maybe one lineup max.
Yeah.
And then look, not to be a douchebag about this, but the Raiders are notorious for getting random fucking touchdowns to weird ass people. So if you're running 150 max, or if you're ballsy enough, I don't think Alec Ingold is a terrible play. You see some of these guys at $200 or $600 on the Raiders side of the ball. Don't hesitate to just fucking conviction play one of them. You may run into something. Alec Ingold probably won't do all that much. I mean, average is pretty much a target a game.
Yeah.
But, there have been opportunities for him to do something with that. I mean, he had a touchdown in week, I don't know, against
week 3,
the fucking
it's
Saints.
Yeah, week 2. Yeah.
Yeah, and it looks like he's getting, he's got a couple red zone targets this year. So there's some opportunity there. I'm just not going to get crazy on these guys. But this is a game where you have these random dudes very much in play.
I think Devontae Booker, and obviously Devontae Booker got some starts when Jacobs was out, and he disappointed. But when he's been the number 2 guy coming in, he's done really well. I know he did have a good game against Denver in week 10. But when he's that spellback and he comes in, he'll get you a touchdown here or there. He'll get you a couple of receptions out of the backfield. So to me, I don't necessarily think I want to go Jacobs and Booker or Jacobs and Richard in a lot of lineups, but I might sprinkle them in here and there. I'd rather focus on the value on the wide receiver side of the ball, which is what we're going to move over to right now. We're going to go wide receivers for Vegas. You've got Nelson Aguilar. He's at 7,400. He's the highest priced wide receiver on the team. You got Hunter Renfrow at 4,800. Zay Jones 800. Brian Edwards 400, and Rico Gafford at 200. Not really worth mentioning, but what do you think about Aguilar, Renfrow, Jones, Edwards? These guys randomly will score. Like Zay Jones can come out and have a big game. Edwards, not necessarily as much. He'll get a target here and there. I don't think I'm going to have any Edwards probably. But you got to look at some of these guys like Zay Jones and Renfrow at those prices. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think they're all in play here, especially with Henry Ruggs being out. I think that's going to open up some opportunities for these other guys.
Yeah.
Nelson Aguilar, honestly, I still... I'm surprised that he's having a season at all, right?
Yeah.
I thought he was one of the shittiest wide receivers in the league, and
yeah,
I don't know, maybe that's just the Carson Wentz effect, but
probably.
He's over here. He's having a hell of a year. He's got like 7 touchdowns or some shit. I mean, he's doing good.
Yeah.
So I don't mind Nelson Aguilar. I'll have a decent amount of him. Let's see, Henry Ruggs, he looks like he's been getting about 4 targets a game, so I'd expect that output to be kind of shifted between Hunter Renfrow, Zay Jones, and maybe Brian Edwards. So same thing. I think they're all in play here, and at $400 and $800 for Zay and Brian, I think they're definitely in play. Again, just like you said, these guys are good. This team is good for getting random fucking touchdowns to people that just shouldn't be on the field, I guess.
Yeah.
And because you only have really 4 wide receivers that are on the active roster at this point, those pass attempts have to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And so you're either going to Josh Jacobs or you're going to one of these guys and Darren Waller. So, I think all these guys are in play. I don't recommend getting more than 2 of them in a set, but I think. I mean, I like Hunter Renfrow a lot, probably from this list because he's so cheap and he does have some explosive upside. He's like I don't know, like a shitty version of Danny Amendola, or Cole Beasley, right? They're the same fucking person. Like I'm pretty sure they're all from the same family. So I think he's fine. And I like him a lot. Zay Jones at $800. He did a lot in Buffalo. He has those random games where he can just break the slate. And at $800, I will have exposure. And then Brian Edwards, $400. He's projected for 6 points. That's perfect for me.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can pretty much count on Hunter Renfrow, even with Henry Ruggs. You can pretty much count on him getting, 6, 7, 8 fantasy points with a ceiling of upwards of, 15 to 20. He's getting targets, 6, 7 targets a game. I don't think he has a ton of opportunity to break the slate, but I do think he has the ceiling at that price tag to be in the optimal, especially without Ruggs, because they're going to have to throw the ball to somebody. And he's under 20% owned potentially, so keep an eye out on ownership here, because Aguilar at 7,400 is pretty good price. He's probably going to be under 30% owned, and to be honest, throwing Aguilar in the captain is, I did that a few weeks ago, he's going to be under 6% owned in the captain. To me, I think this wide receiver core here, you just got to figure out who's going to go off and spread yourself out quite a bit, because there's a lot of leverage to be had. So, anyways, what are your final thoughts on wide receivers here for the Raiders? You said you probably don't want to have more than 2 of these guys. I probably agree with you. I'm probably going to stick with maybe 1 at most. Because I think just the targets are going to go to another guy that we'll talk to here in a minute. Spoiler alert, Darren Waller.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think 2 would be the maximum. And the only reason why you'd have 2 is because you're fading Darren Waller probably. So I'm with you on that. Again, this is where the value is going to be, so you're going to have to get this position right to probably be able to take down the slate.
Yeah.
So pay attention to what's going on here. Keep an eye on last-minute news, and just make sure that you're adjusting your lineups accordingly.
All right, so let's move over to the LA Chargers here. Wide receivers, you've got one of the best players in the NFL, Keenan Allen, at 11K straight up. He's going to be one of the highest-owned players on the slate, and, he should be, because he's getting a ton of targets, ton of receptions. He's catching touchdowns quite a bit. I think I think his floor is around 10 points at this point of the season, which is huge. I think it's a guy that, like I said, you're going to have to fade Herbert or somebody to get him in, and I'd rather fade Herbert and put Keenan Allen in. I feel more comfortable doing that and saving about 8K. I just think that Keenan Allen has to be in a lot of your lineups. It's going to be tough because that core we were talking about is important, but Keenan Allen has to be one of those guys in that core. You got Mike Williams, who's always interesting. He's at 6,200. He's questionable, so I think it's going to drive down his ownership. I think Mike Williams in the captain spot is a hell of a pick, because look, when he goes off, he goes off. Like he's one of these guys that he's not going to get you a lot of 10, 11 fantasy point games. He's probably going to get you 30-point games, So to me, throwing him in the captain spot is more appealing than getting a ton of him in the flex. I'll still match the field in the flex, but I'll be double, triple the field in the captain because I know he can go off. And if he doesn't go off, then those lineups are dead. But I think at 6,200 in the captain, you can fit a lot of really good players in the flex. You got Tyron Johnson, who's been doing pretty decent lately. He had a 17-point game in Week 14 against Atlanta. He had a touchdown and 6 receptions, so a guy to keep an eye on. And then Jalen Guyton, who is an interesting play because earlier in the year he had a few big games. He's on the field quite a bit. He's getting a lot of air yards. He's just not being targeted at all. So how are you handling these 4 guys here? Obviously, Keenan Allen is... Are you going to be as high on Keenan Allen as everyone else, or are you going to, sort of be under the field on him?
No, I'm going to be high on Keenan Allen. It's just too hard to not get exposure to him given the amount of targets that he gets. He's going to probably get there just based on his reception count. He doesn't necessarily need a touchdown to get you the value that you need at that position. Obviously, that would be great, but he's going to get 15 points. He's going to get 15 targets, most likely.
Yeah.
And look, some of these other guys, honestly, I have to downgrade them slightly because the more that we get Austin Eckler back, the more that we get Herbert kind of comfortable with Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen. Like, honestly, I don't get why some of these offensive coordinators just aren't feeding their fucking playmakers.
Yeah.
Right? If you can't stop Keenan Allen, like, why are you throwing it to anybody else?
Yeah.
And same goes to Austin Eckler.
Yeah.
Granted, I know that's not the best DFS mindset, but at some point, one of these head coaches, their jobs are starting to come on the line. That's an easy way to kind of keep your job is, hey, let's use my playmakers. So throw to Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
Keenan Allen is he's going to be a part of my core. I kind of left him out a second ago, but yes, you're right. He'll be in my core, probably locked into all my lineups. I like Mike Williams. I agree with you. I think he's a great captain choice, especially given the fact that that Q tag next to his name is going to deter ownership.
Yeah,
People don't like playing him just because he's already injury prone.
Yeah.
But he's one of the most physical and fastest guys on the field at any given time. He has the ability to take it to the house. So we see that. We see those games this year where he has 15, 20 fantasy points. He had 2 touchdowns earlier in the season.
And those 50-50 balls are more like 70-30 balls in his favor. Like, he's going to go up and catch those balls almost every time. So just the fact, like, having that element to him, being such a big-ass dude, you're going to get an extra couple of deep receptions out of him almost every game that you wouldn't expect other players to reel in because of his athleticism.
Exactly. And with that said, I mean, Tyron Johnson and Jalen Guyton, they're both going to be in play for me. Again, this is an offense that does have the ability to put up some points and put up some yardage. But I'm not going to get too crazy with those guys unless I start working it with a Herbert stack, most likely. Because if they're doing well, it means Herbert's probably spreading the ball around and getting his points. So,
yeah, exactly.
Guyton at 2,800 is an interesting value play, but just kind of our breakdown on the Raiders side of the ball, I just feel a little bit more comfortable there because I think that they have more touchdown potential. So, and I mean, at $800, like what the fuck am I supposed to do?
Yeah, exactly.
So, he's not terrible. Tyron Johnson, not terrible, but I think I'm going to be focusing specifically on Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and just making sure that I have some salary so that I don't have to punt too crazily.
Exactly. Now, lineups that I do play Herbert in, I'm going to be more willing to get one of those extra guys. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen in the same lineup, Mike Williams, Guyton, Keenan Allen's Guyton, that kind of a thing. But I will not do that in my non-Herbert lineups. You just can't do it, in my opinion. So I'd rather focus on the other side of the ball with Derek Carr and get that correlation there, as opposed to negatively correlating myself too much. I know this is Showdown, and I know you can do that to a certain extent, but a lot of times you got to be somewhat smart. I know the dumbass lineups are usually the ones that win, but over time, I think that you just got to play it smart. And in this case, I'm not going to do two wide receivers from the Chargers without Herbert in this case. So let's move over to tight end for the Chargers. You got Hunter Henry, who looks like he is questionable potentially. Nothing's popping up here for me. I don't know if you can see. He's limited practice on Tuesday. He's questionable, so that's interesting. He's 5,800. He's been having a lot better games recently. He got 8 targets last week. He got 10 targets against Buffalo a few weeks ago. Hasn't really gotten in the end zone in the past 3 weeks, but I think he has like 4 touchdowns this year, 3 touchdowns, so nothing really to write home about. But at 5,800, this is a guy that probably will be forgotten about in that mid-range of pricing. He's projected to be around 20% owned, so there's some good leverage there. But like I said, Hunter Henry, Eckler, and Keenan Allen in the same lineup without Herbert, that's a little risky in my opinion. But I'd rather go with Hunter Henry than one of the other receivers. Than doubling up on receivers here, just because I feel like Hunter Henry can benefit quite a bit with a rookie quarterback in a game where they're trailing, getting some dump-off passes here and there. I'm not high on Hunter Henry. I'd rather go another direction. So what are your thoughts on Henry? There's no really, in my opinion, I mean, you got Donald Parham at $200, so it's worth maybe a lineup or two with some of these guys. Parham has 2 touchdowns this year and, a couple games with a reception and a touchdown. So Parham at $200, you always have to consider these kind of guys. What are your thoughts on tight ends here for the Chargers?
I think Hunter Henry is in play. But again, I mean, my primary focus for the Chargers side of the ball is going to be Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen. I don't know that Hunter Henry has the upside that we're looking for. He definitely has a safe floor.
Yeah.
Probably around the 6-7 point mark, which isn't bad for 5,800. But you need to capture all the touchdowns.
You need 75th percentile outcomes on Showdown Slate. You can't be getting these median outcomes that you just can't do it.
Exactly. And Hunter Henry is just, I mean, he's been a middling tight end, which again is interesting to me because he has the talent, he has the physical ability to be a great player, but the offensive scheme just doesn't involve him like they should be necessarily. So I don't know how much of him I'm going to get. I will have a decent amount of exposure, but it'll probably be under the field. Now, if he comes in at like 15% owned or less than 20%, then I might, go closer to 30 to 35. So he becomes a unique leverage play if nobody's on him. But again, you're starting to get into territory. You got Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, and then Hunter Henry. You need to start thinking about fading Derek Carr and going with Justin Herbert. And I just don't know that I'm comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
As far as Donald Parham, or I guess everybody hates Chris. And if you don't get that, just look up his picture and then go on to IMDb. So he has some upside. He does have the ability to get a touchdown. If Hunter Henry doesn't play at $200, sure, just fucking play him.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, that doesn't even matter for your correlation with Herbert. He's just $200 and is a viable punt. So, that's my commentary on tight ends for the Chargers. I'm not high on this group. I'll probably have less than 20% exposure. It's the entire group.
Yeah, I agree. So let's move over to Vegas side of the ball for tight ends. You got Darren Waller, one of the best tight ends in the NFL. I think he's garnering more attention this year. Obviously, he's being placed up there in the top 5 of tight ends, but I still think he's a little bit underrated still. He's at 9,400, which is insane. I think he should be over 10K. He's not projecting that well. I mean, he's projecting pretty good, but he's probably out of the top 5 of projected players when it comes to median outcomes. We don't give a shit about that in NFL mostly, especially Showdown. This isn't NBA. We're looking for ceiling outcomes here, so don't worry about the projections when it comes to that. You're worried about projections in comparison to other players, not like what you think that we're not predicting that they're going to get, that Darren Waller is going to get 15 fantasy points. You're going to need more out of him at 9,400 to be in the optimal. But when it comes to his ownership, I think he's slightly owned above Josh Jacobs. So I love Darren Waller. I want to get a lot of guys in lineups. We're just gonna have to make a decision on who we're gonna leave out of some of these lineups and how we're gonna get value, because a lot of them are expensive. $9,400 for him. I really love Darren Waller. Like I said, I want him in almost every lineup. I'm gonna try to be double the field on him if I can. You got Foster Moreau, who scored a long, I think 47-yard touchdown last week. Pretty nice route he ran, caught it, ran it in, scored a touchdown. This is his second touchdown of the year. So $1,000, Foster Moreau. Look, if you put Darren Waller and Foster Moreau in a lineup together, holy shit, no one is going to have that lineup. I can promise you that. Foster Moreau is around 5% or less owned. And yeah, there's risk there. I don't think he's going to have another 47-yard touchdown this week. But the fact that he had the opportunity in those previous games to actually get those targets means I want to think about playing him. I'm not predicting he's going to get a touchdown this week. I'm just saying he has the opportunity to be put in that position, and if he does, I want to get as much of him as I possibly am comfortable with. And at 5%, I don't need to go 40% Foster Moreau. I just need to go 15%. I just need to go 7, whatever. I that's 3 times the field. I have 3 times the leverage. So just think about that when you're trying to jam in some of these low-owned guys. You don't need to go crazy on them. You just need to get 2-3 times as the field as you're comfortable with, and you're going to have a ton of leverage. You got Jason Witten at $200. He did play last week. I don't remember. He got 1 target. Actually, has he been back for? He was out week 12. Anyways, I don't think you need to really focus on Jason Witten. I know he's $200. He did have a touchdown against Kansas City. He had a touchdown against Buffalo in Week 4. So there's 2 backup tight ends here that are super dirt cheap that have opportunity. So maybe what I want to do is I want to, if you combine their ownership at around maybe they're 10% owned combined, maybe you get 20% of both, of total of both of these guys spread out across your lineup, something like that. I want to try to do that because I don't think anybody is going to be playing Waller with their backup in this lineup at all. So tell me what you think. Am I crazy to try to do that? What are your thoughts on some of these backup running backs here or backup tight ends here?
Yeah, man, I don't think that's a bad idea, given the fact that you're paying. If you stack Darren Waller and Foster Moreau or Darren Waller and Jason Witten, you're still saving over $1,200 on just Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
And I don't think either are terrible punts, right? So Foster Moreau, again, he's going to have that 1 touchdown upside. You don't know what's going to happen with this Raiders team. They have the ability to go out there and just throw the ball to a random person.
Yeah.
So I think he's in play. Jason Witten, same thing. Dude is old as dirt, but I mean, at the same time, this is also the guy we saw streak up the field without a helmet one game and fucking truck people, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like he's a slouch or some. Yeah, never mind. I'm not going to say that. But look, he is a good player and he has the ability to get them. So I think you're fine getting minimal exposure to both these guys. And look, if you're fading Eckler or Herbert or Carr at the captain position, you don't need to have a bunch of variations of these lineups to do this, right?
Yeah.
Run Nelson Aguilar and throw one of these guys in, and you only have to do that once. So I don't think you have to go out and make a huge stand and start jamming these guys into your lineups. But I don't mind stacking 2 tight ends, which I normally wouldn't do in almost any other slate.
Yeah, agreed. Like I said, we're looking for opportunity in those. I like Moreau more than Witten. I think Moreau is going to be out in the field a little bit more. Witten is definitely old as hell. I think I don't think that's controversial at all. But I think I like Moreau more than Witten. Don't go crazy on these guys. We're just trying to point out some random dart throws that you can catch. What can catch 1 touchdown. At $1,000 if Moreau catches a 7-yard touchdown. That's looking pretty good for your lineup if you've got him at 5%. So anyways, we'll move on from that. Let's go kickers and defense here. My favorite subject. You've got Michael Badgley, who might be one of the worst kickers in the NFL history. I'm exaggerating here a little bit, but he hasn't been doing well. He's been missing a lot of field goals. His confidence is low. My confidence in him is super low. Daniel Carlson, not a terrible kicker. I think he's relatively consistent. I just don't think you need kickers and defense in this game at all. I personally, I'm just going to uncheck them all because I'd rather find, 3,800 for Badgley, 3,600 for Carlson, Chargers defense 3,400, Raiders defense 3,000. Look, there's better value in other places, and I think that their ownership is going to be inflated on the kicker side of things because I think people are going to need the way we were building. Like last night, I was playing around with some builds, and there's going to be a lot of salary on the table if you go down to instead of Badgley, if you have to go down to Devontae Booker. I'd rather do that though. Instead of get Badgley, who has a way higher median projection at around 10 points. If he gets 10 points, yeah, he might be in the optimal, but I personally I'm not banking on kickers and how they're going to perform, if they're even going to have opportunity. I know there's opportunity for multiple touchdowns on each side of the ball, but you're still talking about 4 or 5 points for each guy just in extra points, and who knows, they're probably going to miss an extra point here or there. Especially with the way the kickers have been playing lately. I just want to erase these guys. First of all, erase them from fantasy sports in general. And then more locally, erase them from the slate because I don't think you need them.
Yeah, man, I don't really have much interest in either here. I don't think either of these kickers are going to get there, especially with as much value that we have on the slate already. I just don't think that I'm going to get there. They're fine for cash plays if that's what you're doing on Showdown, but I don't give a shit about these guys. And given the performance of the kickers on Monday, excluding Justin Tucker. That kind of fucked me in my one decent lineup. So I don't think I'm going to have much exposure to either of these guys.
I personally just don't think in a lot of cases you absolutely will need kickers. You will need defense. I just personally don't like trying to figure out when or where I need them. In the rare instance that the kicker is like the highest scoring guy on the slate, or a defense gets a pick six, in a matchup like this, I just don't feel like you need it. Defense-wise, obviously, I don't think that there's a lot of room for defense here. You do have a rookie quarterback who can make mistakes. You can't get a random turnover here and there, obviously. But when it comes to kickers, I'd rather just go in another direction here tonight. Rather go in another direction with defense, not waste a lineup on a defense that'll only give me 1 point. I'd rather just go with a Jalen Richard or something else in that case, who actually will get more opportunity. So let's move over to our fade of the night here.
What's your name? Tony! Fuck you, Tony!
So Ellie, tell me about who you're telling to fuck off here.
Yeah, man, it's just going to be Justin Herbert based on his pricing. Again, this is probably not the greatest idea. I'll see if I can find some builds that are going to be unique, but will have some exposure there. But when I'm talking about fading him, I'm just going to come under the field here. I'm not going to get too crazy with it. I'll have a couple lineups that'll capture his potential upside if he does have a good game. But I'm not expecting it. If I expect Josh Jacobs to have a great game, that's going to take the ball out of the Chargers' hands, and it's going to limit the amount of opportunities Herbert's going to have to hit that price, that value mark that he needs to hit to pay off 11,800. So it's not the most set in stone call at this point. If we see ownership kind of adjust as we get closer to lock, and if one of these other guys goes down and opens up some more clear value, then sure, I'll have a bit more exposure. But for right now, this is kind of where I'm going to be going from a building perspective.
For being the highest owned guy in the slate, I don't have a lot of confidence in him having a great game, in my opinion. I think a big reason why he's the highest owned is, he does have that upside, and he's going against a terrible defense, a defense that's been in the news. So I think that's inflating his ownership a little bit. We're not suggesting you just uncheck Herbert and get him in 0% of your lineups. We're not saying that. Like, what we're saying here with calling out Justin Herbert as a fade of the night, you have to make a decision on one of these great players in this game, which one you're going to be under the field on. You can't just be even with the field on every single one of these players and expect to come out profitable. You're going to have to take a stand somewhere. And to me, Herbert is the stand because that's the biggest amount of leverage that you're going to get. And then I don't have to go random darts in the flex as much. You don't have to get 5% owned guys across the board. That's what we're talking about here. So for me, kickers and defense, don't even need to elaborate on that. I just talked about it. It's they're cheap. I think they're going to be over-owned. There's a chance that Badgley hits 3 40-yarders. Yeah, it's possible. And then, but if Badgley is going to beat me, I'm okay with that. I'm banking on the fact that these kickers are not good enough or not needed in this game, minus some extra points. All right, let's move over to our captain choice of the night here, Denny Green.
Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass.
So, Ellie, you're going with Josh Jacobs. Tell me about it. I totally agree with you on this one. He'll be my second highest owned captain, I think.
Yeah, man. I mean, he's just too cheap. He gives you a decent amount of flexibility with the other positions, and he's the sixth highest owned projected player on the slate.
Yep.
That seems just ridiculously low. I understand that he's been having sort of a middling season. Most of his games have been around the 12-point mark, but again, he has too much upside to not take seriously. I think he does have the ability to go out there and thrash this defense. And again, we need to look at some of the injuries on the other side of the ball. If Joey Bosa's out, right? If they're missing some of these linebackers, why wouldn't you just feed Josh Jacobs? And if you're trying to solidify a defense when you just fired the defensive coordinator, what better way than keep them off the field and hand the ball off to one of your superstars?
Yep.
So I fully anticipate John Gruden to kind of buckle down here. And again, start getting ready for the playoffs. Wins playoffs is a consistent defense, and a solid run game, or Patrick Mahomes. So I think you're going to see a little bit more volume going to the running back position tomorrow night, and that's why I like Josh Jacobs.
Totally agree with you on that one. Josh Jacobs, to me, depending on where ownership comes in, I think he will be either my highest owned captain or second highest owned captain. To me, look, Mike Williams, we all know he has the upside. I know, and in addition to the fact that he's hurt, I think it draws his ownership down quite a bit. Sorry, guys, 1 second. It draws his ownership down quite a bit here. And to me, that's important because if his captain ownership is 5% or less, I can get him in 30% of my lineups as captain, and I have a ton of leverage. Typically speaking, I like to go real heavy on guys, but look, with Mike Williams, there's just a lot of unknown. But like I said, I'd rather get him in captain than in the flex because when he goes off, he goes off. And he has the potential for those 2 touchdown, 3 touchdown, 120-yard games on like 4 receptions. Like that's totally in his realm of possibilities. So to me, now that I really think about it, I think Josh Jacobs will be my highest owned captain, followed by some Mike Williams and some other players, some Darren Waller, some Nelson Aguilar, that kind of a thing. Fading the quarterbacks once again. And look, Eckler to me. Getting him in captain is going to be a little bit difficult because how high owned and how high priced he is, and I don't even know where to go with it in the flex. By getting both unique, you're going to have to get like Foster Moreau and Justin Jackson, or you're going to have to do that, and I'm not comfortable doing that. I'd rather just say, look, give me Josh Jacobs, who I know has to me he has just as high of a ceiling as Austin Eckler. He's been trending down lately, and he doesn't have the reception upside. So to me, I'd rather go with Josh Jacobs at like half the captain ownership. It's just obvious to me. All right, dude. So do you want to build a lineup here real quick?
Let's do it.
All right. Let me. I don't have an additional screen here, guys. So just bear with me. Let me pull up. Let's see here. All right, here we go. So who do you want to build with first?
Let's start with Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, I think this is good. This isn't. We built with some Josh Jacobs. I built with them today and last night to play around with it. It's not the easiest lineup build, but I still think it's easier than a lot of these other guys. So we got to go with our core here, right? We got to go with Derek Carr. I mean, we don't have to go with Carr, but I think in this particular lineup, let's do it. Let's go with Austin Eckler. Now, we're going to have to make a decision here, I think. Keenan Allen or Darren Waller. This is going to be interesting. Where do you want to go here? Can we fit in? I mean, Waller is way cheaper, so maybe we go with Waller here. That leaves us with $3,500 per position. If we go with Keenan Allen, we're looking at 2 punts here. So, look, we could go instead of Carr, we could go with Allen and Waller. Like how do you want to handle this?
Yeah, man. Let's start with Waller and fading Allen. And if we need to do another build, we can do it the other way. Because look, I think I think this build, having either or on Austin Eckler or Keenan Allen isn't terrible. So I think this is fine, given the fact that we've got the running back, and then we're kind of prioritizing the passing attack on the Raiders side of the ball with Josh Jacobs. So I'm good with this.
All right, so we've got this. This is looking like this is. Do you want to do a 3-3 here, or do you just want to see how it falls?
Yeah, let's kind of see how it plays out and see what we can do with it.
All right, so what about Balaj? I don't love it, but like these are the kind of lineups we're gonna have to build on this slate. You're just gonna have to be uncomfortable. You can go with Balaj, that gives you the rushing attack, but we really don't have any receivers here. You can go. This is just tough. This is really tough. You can go with Guyton and Balaj. I mean, that's just, I don't like that at all. Like, me personally.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that, though.
Let's get rid of Balaj. I'd rather just go down to someone dirt fucking cheap. Like, maybe we can get Foster Moreau. We can get a Jason Witten. One of these guys. I don't know. What do you think?
Let's throw in Zay Jones.
All right. Zay Jones, $800. Now that leaves us 6,200, and I think we want to get another chart. Well, we're actually at a 4-2 here, which is okay, but we've got $6,200. We can get Mike Williams in the flex.
Yeah, I like that.
So it's not bad. Look, okay. I don't love this lineup personally. I just don't. So let's get rid of Carr here. Okay, let's see what we can do if we fade both quarterbacks. Let's see what kind of lineups we can end up with. Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs. That's a hell of a core, right? And we still got 3,000 left. So if we wanted to go with Devontae Booker, Jalen Richard, Foster Moreau, like who out of those would you prefer in this build?
I'm fine with the Foster Moreau in this build.
Okay.
Let's get double tight end stack.
Yeah, that leaves us with 5,000. I think we want to try to get another Chargers player in. I like 3-3s this week. Just they're going to be popular, but if you have Foster Moreau and Josh Jacobs in the captain, I think you can afford to do a 3-3 because I think this is going to be a back and forth matchup, lots of scoring. So at 5,000, we can get a Tyron Johnson. We can get a Hunter Renfrow. I mean, I don't love Tyron Johnson, but that's an option. I just don't love it. And there's 0 salary left, so we might be, pushing our luck there when it comes to dupes. Hunter Renfrow even here. So look, you can go Hunter Renfrow and then switch out Moreau for another cheaper guy on the Chargers. This is why Josh Jacobs in the captain, I love it. It's just really hard to build with. It just doesn't feel natural to me,
Right.
All right, so you guys get the idea here with the Josh Jacobs lineups. You're going to have to get creative. You're going to have to punt. To me, I personally, I want to go with the Mike Williams build here because I just feel like you can be a little bit more comfortable, and you don't have to be that different. He's like 5% or less owned in the captain. Let me actually see what his ownership here is in the captain. He is, oh Jesus, dude, he's like under 3% potentially. So you can do whatever you can literally play whoever you want. That can be our theme here. So look, and at that price tag, we can go with Carr, we can go with Eckler, we can go with Allen. Now look, I know we're fading Herbert, which is scary, obviously, with both Williams and Allen here. So you could switch out Carr for Herbert in this lineup if you wanted to, but I'm okay with this one. I'm okay. I'm gonna leave this the way it is. You go with Josh Jacobs here, $500. This is gonna be interesting to build this week for sure. So you can get Jason Witten, Alex Ingold. You're gonna have to punt big time here if you're gonna go with a lineup like this. But like I think it's just gonna be a stars and scrubs situation here. How else can I build this lineup? Because this is it's just hard to build, man. It's hard to build this week.
Dude, I mean, look, I don't mind Brian Edwards in this position, right? The only thing that is kind of shitty about that, right, is you're only leaving $100 on the table. But again, at $400, that's not too risky a play. If he goes out and gets 2 receptions for 25 yards, you're still probably getting all the offense, right? The biggest thing that we're looking for here is Mike Williams to have that ceiling game. 100 yards, touchdown, 6-7 receptions, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Which again is possible. And then, I mean, if you can, nobody's going to be doing this. Nobody else is going to be able to pay for Derek Carr, Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Jacobs, right? Because they're going to have Justin Herbert in the lineup. So it means you're fading one of these high upside guys. So I'd rather fade Justin Herbert and have literally this be my core. I mean, at this point, you can even just uncheck the captain spot and then let the optimizer just jam in whatever they think in that position, right? So like, there's a lot of flexibility that these kinds of builds give you, and I think your Williams side a little bit. We might have to start running him in that captain spot for a lot of these builds.
That's gonna be tough. I mean, this could be a situation where you go way low, right? Like you go into the, you get weird with it. And get a dude like let's just look real quick, like get a dude like fucking Hunter Renfrow in the captain. Get a guy like Jalen Guyton. Like I know it sounds crazy, but like in order to fit those high probability plays that I'm sure are gonna do at least pretty well, Like, you're going to have to get weird with it in the captain, I think, this week. Typically speaking, I don't mind paying up in the captain, just going for a lower owned guy. But this week, it's going to be hard. It's really going to be hard this week. So just play around with builds, hand build if you can, crunch out a ton of lineups for whatever optimizer you're using, and just get a feel for who feels the best in captain. Because this could be a situation this week where ownership and scoring is spread out so much, where there's not that one player that goes off for multiple touchdowns, where it's just sort of spread out enough that you can have a guy who has only one touchdown and 100 yards in the captain. You know what I mean? And then it's all a salary game from there. It's building a puzzle piece around that. Now, if it's a Kareem Hunt situation where he goes off for multiple touchdowns and tons of receptions, you're going to need him in the captain. You're not going to be able to win a lineup. You may not even be able to cash. So if that's the case, you're going to need that. If Austin Eckler gets 14 receptions and 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, he's got to be in the captain. I don't care how good the rest of your lineup is. You just got to be in the captain. But there's a situation this week where it's spread out enough that you can get creative with a lower projected sort of player in the captain and lower owned player in the captain that's cheap, and then you just get all those high price guys in the flex. So just keep an eye on things there. That's going to be pretty interesting. This is one of the harder builds we've done in a minute. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, man, this one was pretty tough. And it's not as clear. Like Monday, it was clear to us, at least us apparently, that Edwards was an easy smash play, but we don't really have that here. So keep an eye on injuries, keep an eye on active rosters. Right, we may get something that opens this up a little bit more for us.
All right, guys, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us here. We appreciate it. We will see you for Sunday Night Football. All right, see you guys later.